Celtics Reddit podcast.
Back out to Smart. Fakes the pass all the time. Three. Bang! It's Williams three. Lobs it up for Robert Williams.
Should he go? Jaylen Brown. What a thunder!
Tatum. Durant, the long reach. Tatum crossover, pull-up jumper. It's good. 50 points for Jason Tatum.
Hi, you. It's the Celtics Reddit podcast. We are back. It's your host, Celtics J. And I'm here, as I often am, really almost always am, because ultimately the voice that's here alongside me is the one you're all here to hear. That's weird. Say that 5 times fast. Mr. Wayne Spoony. Spoons, how you doing, man?
Jay, I'm doing good. First of all, no one wants to hear my voice. I don't even.
There's at least one,
Spoons.
There's at least one.
I don't know how my wife puts up with it every day, but yeah, it's good to be back, man. Let's do this thing. It was a fun one last night, even if, we didn't quite get the dub.
Well, I've never seen so many people in the sub reflect on the moral victory, right? Like we've never had the sub all in agreement for moral victories before until last night. You gave a little quick aside acknowledging that maybe people don't like your voice as much as I do, but I do, and we all do. But I also just want to quickly acknowledge that I'm hiding in my closet currently, trying to avoid my 3-year-old son who's determined to interrupt us at some point. So if that happens, y'all, just listen, parent to parent, y'all know. And if you don't know, you don't know.
Yep.
So let's talk a little. Listen,
no idea.
You know.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the season here, right? We got one game before we're going playoff city. So let's talk a little bit about how this season has gone for us and look at, hey, ultimately we're at 50 wins. And I'm just going to point out real quick that Spoons just dropped. So whether he lost connectivity or maybe something interrupted, we're just going to kind of keep moving a little bit. And hopefully he'll be able to rejoin us in a moment. But I want to look at this season so far because the way things started off, I went back and I listened to some of my takes early on, especially when we had just got the news about Danny Ainge resigning, Brad Stevens being promoted up, and then ultimately the news about Ime. And I've got to hold myself accountable here because I had some terrible takes about Ime. Not that I ever really gave a case against hiring Ime necessarily, although I did, based off of what I had seen on YouTube with interviews and what have you, I thought that maybe he was a little too understated, a little bit too reflective of the type of energy we had seen to this point with Brad Stevens to think that he'd be able to come in and have the type of impact that he's had so far. I was clearly wrong. And it goes to show you can't judge a book entirely by its cover. You've really got to be patient and be willing to acknowledge, the various aspects of folks, and especially in the work that they produce. And Ime has done nothing but demonstrate just a remarkably high caliber of coaching quality, both in the way that he's able to lead these young men, as well as navigate the media and the fan base as well. I think he's done just a really poetic job through some tough times in his early head coaching career, because the first half of the season was really spent mostly criticizing him in his first go at this with a team that had really gone through the ringer and had all sorts of change happening. But if nothing else, I think right now we're just seeing a testament to the quality of how this organization is being run now, as opposed to how it's been run in the past. For those that really remember those 90s years, the organizational leadership was, it left a lot to be desired, to say the least. Welcome back, Spoons.
Hey, man, I don't know what just happened. My camera died. Where are we?
We're good. I'm just kind of setting us up. I'm kind of like, I'm just reflecting on I think how this season has, as well as other things, really just reflected a quality of leadership at every level of the Celtics organization, as opposed to, really prior to this ownership group, things were pretty rough.
Terrible.
And I think Wick and the rest of that ownership group has done a nice job of staying involved enough to, keep this relevant for themselves and to stay passionate and invested, while also giving enough room and autonomy to the other folks at the GM level or the president level, the coaching level, and even the players level. They seem to do a good job of staying in the mix, but enough out of it to let the shine go where it mostly belongs. Now, looking at this season, I mean, I know that I started off talking a little bit about just thinking about what the expectations might have kind of been early on. We were optimistic, you and I remember.
For sure.
We went in really thinking this team has all the ingredients to be successful. But then the first third of the season, a little bit more, really, really discouraging to see. But of course, everyone's talking enough about it at this point. That turnaround that we've had in this back end of the season has just been unreal. So Spoons, what I want to get from you is your thoughts on just this turnaround for this year. The fact that this team has turned into a 50-win team.
Knew it. I called it.
Where does this rank for you in your experience as a Celtics fan, as far as like in enjoyability for a season to watch the full way through?
So, you ever like done something stupid when you're drunk and wake up and you're like, oh my God.
Did you not see the video I just dropped in the sub?
I know. But you're just like, oh my God. Like, I bet I pissed off my best friend. Like, my best friend is probably so mad at me. Or something like that.
What have you been doing, Spoons?
Or my girl, like,
what's coming out right now?
No. Or like you're like, oh, my girlfriend's gonna be so pissed. And then when you talk to them, you're like anxious and you're like ready to feel horrible, and they just forgive you and laugh it off. That's what this season is. It is the lowest of in end of December, I was like, we know what this team is. They fucking suck. Blow it up. This is done. This second half of the season has been, other than maybe that, what was it, 17, 18 Tatum Brown, rookie Tatum run?
Magic.
No, 18, 19, yeah. Rookie Tatum, second year Brown run to the Eastern Conference Finals. This is right up there, even with like the 08 season, at least as far as the regular season goes, of enjoyability. One, Al's back, who I always loved. And then everybody else is basically homegrown. I mean, Tice, we didn't draft, but he was a rookie with us.
Yeah, he's a Celtic guy.
I mean? Exactly. I mean, I've never experienced a team that's been built from the ground up with like all your guys like this. And it's super this is like the dream. This is what I used to do in like NBA 2K is like, oh, this shit never happens. And I'll trade for 10 draft picks and I'll draft all my dudes. And like, this doesn't happen that often in real life.
Those 2K teams that you used to run with where J.R. Giddens eventually becomes an MVP. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. So like Marcus Thornton from William and Mary or whoever that dude was. But it's been awesome. And the way they've been playing, I think, like even that 08 team was amazing, but that was ugly basketball, dude. They won some games like 75-68. Like the Celtics are amazing defensively and their offense is like Warriors-esque at this point. Like they're moving the ball around, they're burying threes, everybody's high-fiving, like Bill Simmons said, a lot of threes, a lot of high fives. That's what's happening now, and it's been great. And I think doing the podcast helps because I get to like talk about it with people who give a shit, which is a lot of fun too. So this is right up there, man. How about you, Jay?
So this is a special season for me for a couple of some overlaps, some points that you bring up. I think seeing a homegrown team do what this team is doing is a lot of fun. I imagine this has got to be largely what that OKC fan base felt like when Harden, Durant, and Westbrook were doing their thing. And so there's that piece that's really enjoyable. There's also a vindication for me, I feel like personally, because for me as a fan, I can get just as down as anybody and frustrated and all that. But I tend to still look at, the narratives that come from the team and that I can observe and enjoy that, are still fun to follow. Like, the player development, the
for sure.
Yeah, those micro stories that come up, right? And then if the court play is so terrible. You know, you go to what they're doing off the court and you find ways to appreciate and enjoy that. This team has made it so easy on both sides of it. You know, I mean, you got guys like, I mean, you know, everyone knows the players on the team that I align with and tend to talk the most and boast the most about. And we'll talk about one of them, especially in the next segment here, Marcus Smart. You know, so many of these guys, they really do have just such a profound connectivity off the court. And so it just makes a lot of what they're doing on the court that much more special. And I really appreciate that. Marcus Smart probably at the forefront of that for me.
Sure.
And so I think just the fact that while everyone else was screaming, the world is on fire, blow this thing up, you know, big changes are needed. It's nice to recall all the times that I or others like me have said, hey, you just got to wait. Like, just be patient. There's a chance here. There's good stuff that's bubbling underneath this. You know, bad times look different than this. You know, we've seen bad times and they look and feel different than this. And so seeing that actually kind of happen, you know, the only thing I can kind of relate it to, and I didn't experience this in a firsthand way as a fan by any stretch. I've only seen it as it communicated to me through movies. But the whole Moneyball movie, like this makes me feel a little bit like what the fan base was like in the movie Moneyball, where everyone was just like shitting on that team at the beginning of the year, like, this is crazy, you're all nuts, what you're doing is stupid, you know, and everyone was shouting stuff like that. Starting Marcus Smart as the point guard is stupid. You can't have him be this. You can't have these players do that. Al Horford's too old. The Jays got to get split up. They can't play together. All the things. And then what do? Midway through, they just go on a freaking terror of a run and put everybody on notice. And now all anyone can talk about is the magic potion that got drank in Boston, but really there's no magic to it. It's grit, it's grind. It's what they were all talking about, Brad and the rest of the organization right off the jump, you know, and Ime when he showed up. It's that grit, that grind mentality. And I've loved it. It's been easy to root for. And I hope that it lasts as long as humanly possible.
Yeah, and Jay, I will say before the season started, I wrote something and it did pretty well on our NBA. So it pulled in a lot of non-Celtics takes, and my premise was basically like, can Marcus Smart be the starting point guard? There are a lot of takes in there from non-Celtics fans that are not aging very well. I'll say that. Maybe we'll pull some for next show, or maybe that's an off-season thing we can do, is roast some of our friends over at our NBA. But yeah, speaking of Smart,
let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
He has been wonderful. I mean, like, in order to be a positive player playing the level of defense he does, you do not have to be particularly good at offense. Like, you know, Andre Roberson couldn't even dribble, and he started for like an Western Conference Finals team because he was so good on defense. Smart is playing that level of defense, and he's also pretty damn good on offense too. And that adds up to an insanely valuable player. So, well, I don't think he'll ever make an all-star game, man. His impact is right there. I mean, his impact is truly right there.
And I think it's fair to acknowledge that right now, the 5 players that are starting are our 5 best players. Like, yeah. That's clear. Like, there's some squads that I know at different times, like your 5th best player might be the first guy off the bench, you know?
Miami. Right. Heroes like their 3rd best player, honestly. Right. Yeah.
For the Celtics, their top 5 are exactly their starters, and they're all in the right position they're supposed to be in. But I know, you know, you've had a relatively recent episode of your show where you were talking about who, in fact, is the 3rd best player on this squad, and you were looking at that kind of in depth. And I don't know that you came away really feeling super confident about what the answer was then. It's shifted, and that's part of the beauty, I think, of this team too, is that you can make, I think, good cases for several guys on this team, and that speaks to the quality of the team dynamic that's in place right now. But let's revisit that a bit, and let's try to make sort of a as much of a consensus choice as we can right now about the 3rd best player on this team. So right now, knee-jerk reaction, 3rd best player, Boston Celtics this season, just regular season, go.
Marcus Smart, no doubt about it.
Boom.
I actually do not think it's a question. So I will say on my solo show, I don't think about it beforehand. I just pull the stats and then I just talk. And I look at the stats for the first time when I'm talking, and Al just blows you away with some of the stats. And I did not, and when I took a step back, saw some of the comments from people, I just think I undervalued. Smart has a much more difficult role on both ends than Al. And the fact that his stats are comparably good while taking on that huge role is just a more valuable player. And then since then, he's really shut me the hell up because he's been on fire and just like destroying teams. And he is you can tell he's having fun when one or both the Jays are out. And it's like, I'm shooting 20 times tonight, baby. Let's go. And he's been great. He's been freaking great. So I think it is unequivocally, without question, Marcus Smart. And to your point, it's almost like we have 3 third best players, because Al the other night was 17, 10 and 3 or something like that, and didn't miss a shot. Like, that's pretty damn good. So
Pretty
and
solid.
Obviously Rob. Yeah, and
Pretty
obviously
solid.
Rob's amazing. But I think it's clearly Smart. I'm sure, Jay, you might agree with me, right?
I do tend to agree with you on the Smart take. Yeah,
Shocking.
that's probably a given. And so I won't belabor that too much here. What I will bring up though, and I think this is an interesting conversation to have, because I think by and large we would be likely to see a pretty sizable base of the fanhood kind of looking at Marcus Smart versus Rob Williams for that third best player on the squad. And I think there's, and I think that's fueled as well by the talk of which one of them is more deserving of defensive player of the year. A lot of folks have been talking about Rob and how, it's his impact on the defensive end that is really allowing the Celtics to do a lot of what they're doing. And it's what he's capable of doing both on the perimeter as well as playing that quote unquote free safety role to protect the rim that has really just made this Celtics team another level to deal with on that side of the court. And so I get that. And he's also, I think, in some ways, a really exciting. Obviously, he's an exciting offensive threat because of his ability to get above the rim.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But he's also showing some touch, and the playmaking is legit and dynamite. So I think there's an interesting case to make there. And I don't think anyone that's arguing for Rob to be considered in that regard is totally unhinged by any stretch.
No.
But I do wonder, one of the things we've seen with Rob out, we all panicked. Rob got hurt, and the first thing on everyone's mind is it reminds me of a Adam Sandler movie, but not Adam Sandler's character, the other guy there, Rob Schneider. Oh, we suck again. He's in like every one of those movies and gives that, whatever that accent is. Everyone panicked and was thinking we're going to just nosedive, and we didn't. And not only did we not nosedive, but we're still blowing some teams out. Now, admittedly, right, we struggled with Milwaukee, but like we competed with Milwaukee.
Tatum and Horford and Rob didn't play that game.
Right.
That's 3 starters, fully healthy Milwaukee. And we still almost snuck out a win, man. Like that was super impressive.
And who's largely responsible for it, right? Like look at those stats for that game. Like Marcus Smart is a beast. And Nesmith was a difference maker. That's true.
Yeah. Smart for Milwaukee, maybe. Smart was incredible. Jalen had like a bad 2.5 minutes to end the game, and he wasn't efficient in the first half. But on balance, I think he was really good. And Hauser was great, as much as it pains me to say. And you know who the MVP was, though? Daniel Tice balled out. He's been balling. Ever since we shit on him, Jay, and said he looks like he's hurt or lost a step, he's been out of control good.
Listen, he's an avid listener to the show.
Big fan.
And he knows that if we're criticizing him, the next in line is going to be Perk, and he wasn't going to have any of that. So he just went ahead and offered the correction ahead of time. Sorry, Perk, for taking your thunder. You'll get the next one. So I think that's been a really interesting narrative, is looking at those dynamics and the player rankings on the squad. And yeah, last night's game is, I think, just another feather in Marcus Smart's cap, where we see his being on the court is a huge difference maker. Now, what the reason why that comes to mind, though, is now think about the handful of games that we didn't have Smart for and how we looked then. Now,
Sure.
to be fair, that was right at kind of that point where we're starting to make that transition, but it didn't fully click until he came back.
Agreed, totally.
And so I'm left kind of looking at this and saying, I can understand an argument for Rob, for sure, especially with the different nuanced ways or exciting ways that he can impact both sides of the floor. But you take one of them off, it's Smart that's the bigger loss for what this team can do on either side of the court at this point, in my opinion. I think I'm right there with you. Inarguable to say anyone other than Marcus Smart is the third best player on the squad. Now, here's the final follow-up to that before we go into the last piece here. And that is to ask, can this team win a chip with Marcus Smart as the third best player? Because this is the debate that we had prior to the season.
Yeah, you've totally mousetrapped me here. I'd prefer not to respond. Yes. All right, next question.
Yes. Like I said, it's vindication, baby.
Yeah, I know.
Vindication.
Yeah, good. This is such a bullshit cop-out way to look at this. And I hate it when people do this to me, but I'm glad to be wrong.
Right.
Which I know is bullshit and shitty, but
to be fair, because you're being such a good sport about it, so I'm going to meet you halfway here. Because be fair, you always offered the qualifier that if Marcus Smart makes certain adjustments and improvements, then sure, you could absolutely see that. And we have seen Smart make some adjustments. I don't think it's exactly the type of adjustments that a lot of folks were calling for, because if you look at the numbers, he's taken the third most shots on the team.
This feels more role specific than skill development specific. So I will say that I was not totally on to. I was more talking about. I will say, even though I didn't think he could be our third best player and win a championship, I did say I think he's going to have a wonderful year. Yeah. But I just don't think I appreciated how empowering him with the ball was going to bring out all his best qualities, because I really don't think he's a better player than he was last year. Well, last year was tough. He was hurt. But like 2 years ago, I think that he's just in a role more suited for his strengths. So he looks a lot better. And guess what? Hey, he's a bigger benefit to the team when he's playing the right role. Imagine that, which is basically what you were saying, Jay. So yet again, you mousetrap. You got me. You laid me out good, man. That was a slow burn.
These moments are few and far between, Spoons. When you don't live your life based on the numbers, you gotta take them when you get them. You know what I mean?
I know. I'm bowing down, man. Well done.
So let's just real quick, just to bring us back to the Defensive Player of the Year conversation. There's a couple of there's a post up right now that some folks have been talking in, and it was posted by RLSO12, whatever the hell that means. Cool username. Shout out and let us know what the heck that stands for. But they'd shared a quote from Kungu. And I might be saying that person's name wrong. I'm assuming they're a journalist.
He's not, but he's a big like Twitter Celtics guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this just demonstrates also like my lack of total intimate awareness and knowledge of mainstream media, because I tend to veer a little bit from it where I can. But anyway, the quote is Marcus Smart. If Marcus Smart doesn't win Defensive Player of the Year this year, I don't think he ever will. Award is going to shift from awarding centers to awarding the mobile bigs like Simmons, Mobley, Rob Williams, Barnes, etc. I'm assuming they mean Scotty Barnes and not Harrison Barnes.
I think so, but I would not put Scotty Barnes on that list. I think he's more comparable to like Tatum as a defender than he is those guys.
Yeah, well, maybe this is why Kungu is not an actual journalist and is just a Twitter person.
He's a great Twitter follow. I strongly recommend following him.
Kungu and Giannis, those are damn it, Janos, right? Just came back.
Janos,
Janos, is that how you pronounce
whatever,
it?
Yeah.
I've never heard it
I
said
have no
out
fucking
loud.
idea.
No,
I know,
that's
yeah,
not
me
true.
either.
I've heard
I'm
Jam
like-
Packard say it, and so I just forgot. It's been a couple years now. He's been
Yeah,
he's
I
been
know.
in,
He's been
in the weeds hiding.
hibernation.
So listen, I'm digressing. I'm getting lost. One of the comments I liked coming out of this was user smoking the trees, but with the threes. I like that. I like to see that's a username I can
nice.
get behind. If he doesn't win it this year, he'll just become a mobile big. There's levels to this shit, and Marcus is only getting started. Amen, smoking the threes. Amen. I'm right there with you. And then I like the following comments that came from that too. User, I gonna wreck you. You mean he's not a mobile big already? And then below that, Aeolian mode, stretch 6, baby. You know,
Exactly.
I love it.
There we go.
I love it. There's another group, and I'm going to apologize now. I'll try to shout them out in the comment thread because I'm forgetting the name of their pod off the top of my head, but I will give them a shout because I think they deserve it. They just did an episode talking specifically about Marcus Smart, and they spoke to a point that I think is valid, which is, I think not only is he going to win it, but if he wins it this year, I think he's going to essentially create a situation where this is all going to flip to the other end of the spectrum now, where centers, especially traditional centers, are not going to be winning this award anymore. Because I think what Marcus is demonstrating right now is that you can have a player that's his type of archetype that can be more impactful at every single position than you could find in anyone that can play center.
Marcus Smart boxed out Brook Lopez and Giannis multiple times last night. Like, I mean,
Good luck
he's
with
like,
that.
I know he's making Giannis work on a post up. Like, I get that he's not a traditional rim protector, but him and Derek White, and I think that's why we got Derek White, is so we always had a Marcus Smart on the court. They unlock your defense to do stuff in ways that you just cannot with Kemba Walker,
Yep.
right? Like, imagine Kemba Walker trying to post up Brook Lopez, right? Like, he comes up to the dude's kneecaps. I mean, so I tend to, I think Kungu is touching on something, and that podcast is touching on kind of the same thing. How we look at what a valuable defender is definitely shifting. That said, I don't necessarily agree with Alex that, I mean, Smart may not be Ben Simmons, but can you really say his impact is lower than Simmons? Simmons isn't a rim protector either. That's why he can't play center.
I don't want us to go down this road of shitting on Simmons, because ultimately there's a user that I think brings up an important point that we need to consider before we do any more shitting on Simmons. So,
please,
user Cremaster Shake points out, I mean, hardly anyone's gotten past Simmons this whole season. He'll probably be rookie of the year.
Nice. Yes,
Touché.
That's money. That's a great comment.
Touché.
And yeah, he's not giving up a point all season. So all those stats greeny sites where Smart gave up like 2 points on 50 possessions all game, suck on that, greeny. Simmons hasn't been scored on. Also, shout out Master Shake, man. My buddy, what was that, Aqua Teen Hunger Force? Are you familiar with that show at all? Yeah, my buddy went as Carl one year for Halloween, and he shaved the top of his head, and nobody got it. Just our
did he
friend
do the
group
white
got
tee,
it.
like midriff?
Yeah. And he's very hairy, and it was cold as hell in Massachusetts in October, and girls were coming up to him being like, "Is your hair always like that?"
Like, yeah, baby.
Very embarrassing. Anyway, shout out Aqua Teen. Yeah, Simmons, but you know what I mean? Like, Smart's just as valuable as any of those, quote, mobile bigs, because he might be 6'3", but he has the same impact as those dudes, and that's why he's a rare guard that's being considered for DPOY. I mean, Drew's good.
He's a unicorn point guard in the way that Gary Payton was, right? Like Gary Payton was, and Jason Kidd to a certain extent. Like, Jason never got the same defensive accolades that Payton did, but he had a similar dynamic in that because of his size, his strength, and his commitment to both sides of the ball. He was just a very unique guard at the time. And it did kind of create an archetype for a minute, because I think a lot of people forget Chris Paul is kind of that archetype too, that Jason
He's a
Kidd,
wonderful defender.
Gary Payton archetype. And I think it's just been a disservice to Marcus that people have not recognized or appreciated him in the same spirit as those players. Now, is he going to average as many assists or as good a ratios and stuff as Chris Paul? Absolutely not. But
Paul's also like a top 20 player ever.
right.
You know what I mean?
Like,
so,
people call him the point
right.
god for a reason, right? Like,
exactly.
Like he's in conversations with like John Stockton. All right?
Exactly.
The fact that I think it is fair to, at least on the defensive end of the ball, though, bring him, Marcus Smart, that is, into the conversation with the likes of guys like Gary Payton and stuff like that makes total sense.
No
and I
doubt.
think what I love the most is that we're seeing his playmaking and his ability to like really commit to that point guard role. The last thing I want to spend a little bit of time talking about is just looking ahead into the playoffs now. It's looking pretty much like we're likely getting Chicago. Yeah, I mean, that is it mostly a done deal now, Spoons? School me on this.
So this is how we get Chicago, I believe. If we win against Memphis, we will play Chicago, period. If we lose, then Philly has to lose at least one more game, because we have the tiebreaker. But they play shitty teams. So Memphis is already locked into the 2 seed, I believe. And we play on Sunday. So we should know by the time we play whether the game means anything or not for us. I think the 3 seed is absolutely perfect. That's why I called this loss against Milwaukee the best loss in Celtics history. And Memphis is not going to play anybody. They'd be insane. But they're also like 19-2 without Ja, so who knows? Their deep bench can ball, so we might have to bring it regardless. But I hope and I think that this Memphis game, very likely, there's a potential it does not matter, or there's a potential it's our starters against a bunch of G Leaguers. So yeah, there's a few things that need to happen, but we're almost certainly going to be the 3 seed, I think.
And if it's not Chicago, then it's most likely going to be
probably Toronto. Would probably drop to 4, which, I mean, again, I seem to be in the minority here. We would fucking destroy Toronto. They cannot score on us.
I just think their length is I think
I know. We talked about it.
Their length is just, and that's where we tend to struggle, and that's why Giannis is such a damn problem. That length, it's especially when you're a ball moving team, right? And you're not totally locked into just ISO creation, that length is a bear.
What I will say is we played 3 games where we actually had our lineup. One was the 3rd or 4th game of the season. We got spanked, and then we handled them the other 2 once we were playing. And once we were playing better, we absolutely handled them. We strangled them out. They couldn't score. We can score enough. I just am not concerned about Toronto for the most part, other than, the outside the lines concerns, I guess.
So listen, I'm going to touch on this because
right.
Our man, who is probably the only living person less reliable than myself, Mr. Chris Mannix, dropped some, what I suppose he would like to have interpreted as information recently, alluding that at the very least 2 of our starters wouldn't be able to play if we were playing in Toronto. And this suggests alignment with stuff that has come from Scal as well. So a lot of folks in the sub now are waging this sort of like sub-internalized debate, arguing
Civil
over
war.
Whether, especially Jalen seems to be at the top of everyone's mind because he's one of our 2 best players, and he's been outspoken only in vague ways that don't give people the sense of confidence that they would like to have, that he's vaccinated. Ultimately, the big concern, though, is that if we play in Toronto, they wouldn't then be available. And the 2 names that are the most concerning right now that are attached to all this are Al Horford and Jaylen Brown. So, I bring it up because it's been talked about enough at this point that I feel like we got to at least acknowledge it.
The last episode that Ben and Jackson did with Jake, I know they touched on it briefly. Jake does believe the reports. I will say, I think importantly, and why a lot of this has gotten out of control, is I think it's very clear the Celtics have a no comment. We do not confirm or deny anyone's vaccine status. It looks like the players agree with that and will not disclose anything except for their own, which obviously it's your own health information. Of course, you own that. Jalen's made some weird ass comments. Al straight up was like, I can absolutely play in Toronto. So I don't know why Al's getting wrapped up into this so much, but I just frankly don't know what to think. I do like sometimes agree with like where there's smoke, there's fire, but there's also some evidence that they are like they showed up to a team dinner that they couldn't have been at. And I think Richardson and Schroeder did not go to if they weren't vaxxed. And so I have no friggin' idea if they are or not, man. I don't want to speculate one way or another. But we'd crush Toronto even if we didn't have those two for the away games anyway.
Well, and if it's round 2 that we see them and we're getting Rob back, that would certainly soften the blow if we didn't have Al and Jalen. First round
Tatum.
To not have 3 starters though in that first round.
Yeah,
for some of those games, that would be tough. That would be tough.
No doubt.
That's putting a lot. That's putting a lot on Tatum. But like you said, I also don't necessarily want to get into the speculation game. What I find frustrating about this though is what I think Mannix is doing without maybe fully realizing it himself in a self-aware way, is that he's really contributing to a bullshit strategy that a lot of these quote unquote journalists or what have you are using to generate just like their own relevancy here. Because whether it's Mannix that's wrong or all the other folks that have reported contrary to what he's suggesting, someone involved in this bull, right, is just flat out saying lies for the sake of saying lies.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't really care who the hell it is. I just think it's kind of shitty that we have to sort of passively accept that that's a norm and that that's okay. And this is one of the issues that I think kind of it bleeds into other aspects of our society. Like, and I'm not going to get on a total soapbox here and like go down like let's criticize society road, but like I do think it speaks to something a little bit greater and more important than just basketball, in that the way that we passively tolerate certain types of coverage of our favorite sports teams, it does have a consequence. Like if you tolerate bullshit coverage of your team and reporters just like putting out clickbait garbage to manipulate your own emotional responses to stuff to make their own companies or their own careers more relevant and more profitable, then it's going to keep happening because it's going to generate revenue, and revenue is going to continue to generate ongoing investment. Like we as fans just got to do a better job. We got to stop tolerating the bullshit. Like either it means so much to you, right? Like you're going to really just take a stand in this thing and if you're not going to follow a particular player or a team because of their status, vax wise, like, okay, so be it. But like creating a situation where we're incentivizing these reporters, these journalists to go around and just speculate, basically shitting on the integrity and the character of these other players and how fans are relating to them, that affects these guys' money and bottom line, man. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like dropping rumors that aren't substantiated on going either way, whether they're vaxxed or not vaxxed, impacts their marketability to their fan bases. So like, how are we tolerating this nonsense? Like, I think teams need to shut this shit down. Fan bases need to shut this shit down. We deserve a higher quality of journalism, people.
And that quality is the Celtics Reddit podcast.
That's right, baby. That's right. That's right. We coming in hot, heavy.
I'm with you. The only hot take artist, you're going to like, probably your jaw's going to drop. The only hot take artist I like is Stephen A. Smith, because he's so ridiculous that he's just like a character. No one takes him seriously. And I just think he's hilarious, man. And he knows it. Like sometimes there's a clip, look this clip up, of Stephen A. claiming he would have won the OJ trial if he was the prosecution on First Take. And like, he was like, he laughs right before he's about to say it. Like, I can't believe I'm about to say this shit, man. And
But he
says,
knows
like,
what it's gonna do.
I know. But he is like funny and a master, and it's tongue in cheek. Mannix is doing it because he wants to drum up bullshit and get his name in the news. I think Windy, I don't know. Windy's Bontemps is he's a blowhard. I don't know if he's been on the pod before, but that dude sucks. Ben, cut this if he has been. We're in contact with him.
Don't cut it, man. Drama sells. If nothing else, we're bringing up the fact that drama sells.
Yeah, it 100% does. So that's why I want to announce that Jay and I are going to track Jaylen Brown and Al Horford down, and we're going to find out if these guys are vaccinated or not. For you, no, not really. But
so my favorite comment that I get to share for this episode comes directly to us from Frodo. Not directly, it was in the sub. I'm sorry, that was misrepresentative. But Frodo MK had the comment: if JB and Al play in Toronto, Mannix not only should retire, but should publicly apologize. Other than some obvious stuff like injury reports and trades, I've never seen him report anything true. Funny thing is that his report was published on a Canadian sports website, makes it more interesting. So I like that I like that Frodo MK is kind of taking it and like reversing the like conspiratorial context back onto Mannix, and how he's being used as a tool for the Toronto media lean. But go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I wouldn't be shocked if they are not vaccinated, but I also wouldn't be shocked if they are. That's why this is like so dumb. Clearly Jaylen Brown does not want us to know what his vaccine status is. Look, do I think that's kind of silly? I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I don't give a shit. I'll tell anybody. Do I think it's kind of weird? Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily mean he's not vaccinated. And like, we don't know, and nobody's going to dig into his damn medical record to find out. So let's just see how this shit plays out, man. Let's fuck it. If we play Toronto, we'll find out, you know?
We will find out. And they'll have to answer for it then, and let's deal with it then.
Right.
And my last little bit on this is just to say, ultimately, I know I'm a little bit ridiculous at times. I totally get that. And I, I'll tend to always lean towards silly rather than serious. But at the same time, I really genuinely mean this to anyone listening that feels similar to me as far as the way sports are covered and is just frustrated that you've got to really do some work to find substantial journalism anymore, like legit news and insight. And if we want that to change, and not only just at the sports level, right, but like all I hear about is people complaining and being frustrated and discouraged over the way that really this is the same way that things go with politics and in government and in business and like all these different ways that we get news that's distorted and adjusted so that it plays to our emotional reactivity for the sake of generating revenue. If we want that to change, man, like we've got to interact different. Like we've got to adjust. We've got to make ourselves less marketable with those strategies or to those strategies. And what easier, more accessible way to do that than to practice with like our sports fandom, right? Like using this pocket of space,
the unimportant shit,
right?
Yeah.
So then you can grow, and like when it matters more, right? Like then you can flex those same types of muscles in these other arenas where it's got even higher stakes. Because ultimately, right at the end of the day, my life doesn't change one way or the other with either of these guys being vaccinated, win, lose in the playoffs. But the way this stuff is being covered and presented to people in sports right now is no different than all these other areas. And it's devastating to the way that we understand what's happening in the real world and the way that we relate to one another. And so, again, don't mean to go on too much of a soapbox, but I feel like, it is something that is at least worth acknowledging. And I really appreciated Frodo putting Mannix on blast because, yeah, Mannix, if you got this one wrong, dude, I'm all set with you. You got to go.
Yeah, for sure. And can I just say, to put a fine point on all of this, man, James Harden kind of sucks, Jay. like Toronto might beat Philly, so we might find all this out in the second round.
Someone had pointed out his stats and suggesting something like, he's gone through slumps before. He's obviously going to come out of it, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, a slump is one thing, but like he's out of shape. Like he's just not even running well right now. Like that has nothing to do with like missing some shots. Like there's something else. There's got to be other stuff, right? Like there's always a little bit more than what we're ever savvy to.
As a mid-30s man, I can tell you, eating bad and drinking catches up to you eventually, James. You might want to cut that stuff out, buddy. Get out of the strip club, brother.
It's just water. I swear, it's just water. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for us for this episode. Spoons, as always, appreciate you joining me and having some conversation.
Anytime.
I'm looking forward to these playoffs. Just let the folks know where they can find you and anything that you might have coming their way.
At W Spoony, and then I have a medium Wayne Spoony. I am writing a Pritchard thing that I think will, but it's just I've been very busy with my real actual life job, so I'm gonna try and get that out. I should have a little more time because we get a week off for the play-in stuff. So I will definitely finish that, get some Spoony Show episodes out while we have a little break in Celtics games here. But yeah,
a little break, but a big PP. Article.
Oh, you should. The title is ridiculous.
It's gotta be.
You will know when it's my piece on Pritchard when you read the title.
Excellent.
I'm also photoshopping. Have you seen the Ben Simmons certified dickhead shirts?
No.
Let's just say that there's a Photoshop of that.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it, my friend. All right. And everyone else, keep a lookout. You can find us, obviously, in the sub as always. You can find us on Twitter at Celtics Reddit Pod, as well as on YouTube, where you can access this show, as well as our catalog of episodes prior to this, and other auxiliary content, including focused film breakdowns, Spoony's show, and much more content to come as we continue moving forward.
The breakdown of the IT curse.
And there's only one place you're going to get full, comprehensive, investigative journalism, integrity-laced journalism on the curse. And so please, if you haven't yet, make sure to dive into that and get up to speed. I'll be updating the playlist in our YouTube account so that all of those episodes are actually really easy to get caught up with if anyone is interested. So check that out. Also, please make sure to comment and let us know, give us some feedback. What things are we doing well that you're really appreciating on the pod, as well as other content that we're putting out? What things would you like to see change, or what things would you like to see brought into the mix? We'd like to hear more from all of you and have even a higher level of engagement, because that's what this is all about. We appreciate you, and we're looking forward to the next chance we get to talk Celtics. Till then, peace.